I will try to set the stage for the discussions that we will be having in the next 2 days by giving a historical evolution of industrial parks, what they look like, what the objectives of the promoters of parks have been, and some of the lessons learned. Parks have been around for a long time. In Gibraltar, in 1705, the free port was first declared, followed by, in the 1840s, Hong Kong, and since the 1920s to the present, industrial parks have been serving trading, industrial and service operations under various names: customs and free zones, industrial estates, industrial parks, business incubation centers, export processing zones, special economic zones, more recently science, research and technology parks, and finally, in the era of inclusive and sustainable development, inclusive and sustainable industrial development, eco-industrial, sustainable, green, low carbon, and circular parks. In the early days, parks were basically serving traders. Since the 1920s, they have been accommodating primarily manufacturers, and since the 1950s, they have also been used to translate research results to innovations in production and other business activities. This is a historical document, the front page of it, the first UNIDO guidelines in 1978 of industrial parks. UNIDO has been actively supporting promoters of industrial parks since the 70s, and this guideline you can still find in almost every university library and in a lot of public libraries. I have here, and I'm not going to read through the whole list, we have assisted many of our member states from Argentina, Colombia, Peru, in Peru 1986, to Botswana, to China, to Moldova, to the Russian Federation, as well as to Turkey, where I come from, to Fiji, Tonga, and Vanuatu. Many member states have worked with UNIDO in developing the locations where industries have been settling down. An industrial park, in fact, is a industrial real estate with infrastructure. The basic infrastructure is internal roads, utilities, some other services and amenities on site. Parks in the more recent years have been also providing factory shells to facilitate immediate establishment of some of the industries and offices. Of course, all of this infrastructure is to make sure that as little as possible to decrease the costs. In industrial parks, businesses come together. Objectives of a park's developers determine the location and the size. Where is it going to be? Is it going to be in an urban area or a rural area? Near a university or a center such as an airport where you would have maybe some services. The extent of the infrastructure is also determined by the objectives of the promoters, the incentives, and public services, amenities, and the tenants, who is going to stay and work in the park. Location and size are very important. The location has to be right. If you are setting up a science park, you want it to be near universities and research centers. You cannot put a science park on a beach. It would be nice if there was also a university. That would be lovely. You would then attract a lot of researchers. You have to have, an industrial park needs to be near ports, railways, highways, labor resources, reliable and adequate utility connections nearby. A location with a low load-bearing capacity, a very high slope on the land, and prone to natural disasters will also not be suitable. Because all of these factors, if you have a high slope, you would have to dig a lot of earth to make it level. If you have low load-bearing capacity, you would have to invest a lot under the ground to make it stable. The size of a park also depends on the type of businesses it will accommodate. Very small parks will be expensive to set up. Usually in the world we have now thousands and thousands of parks all over the globe. But the smallest ones are around 40 hectares. And of course in China, Shenzhen, it was in 2010 1,950 kilometer square, and it's been expanding since then. Industrial parks, the typical park in developing countries, including middle-income countries, starts around 100 hectares in a planning stage, 100 to 150 hectares, and then it is then also built in phases depending on demand. Operations and infrastructure. The day-to-day management of a park for the real estate to be called a park must be done by a park operator. I will show some pictures in a little while. So that infrastructure is maintained all the time and related services are consistently provided. An industrial park's minimum infrastructure contains, of course, the roads, landscaping, sidewalks, but also potable water, electricity supply networks, stormwater, wastewater networks, and a treatment plant for water, natural gas network, if the gas is available, a fire station, a first aid station, commercial services building, because manufacturers staying in the park will also need to eat, they need restaurants, they want a bank or bank branches, they might need a notary public to notarize anything that you would think of as services that for instance, logistics companies could locate in a commercial area, a parking lot, a weighing station for trucks, and a park management and administration building. Incentives. Some governments provide additional incentives and public services in industrial parks in the world today. These would be typically a one-stop shop where manufacturers or whoever is going to locate in the park could, for instance, do business registration and licensing, get the construction permits, land titling, visa processing for foreign staff, etc. Some parks, some governments decide to give fiscal advantages. For instance, customs and corporate tax exemptions, reductions, and so on, financial incentives, such as loans and loan guarantees for putting up the buildings, and for instance some subsidized services for training the labor force as well as the entrepreneurs. Now let me walk all of us through the objectives of park promoters. Park promoters usually want to improve competitiveness of the goods and services that are produced in the country, so they want to set up a park. Or it might be for domestic and foreign investment promotion. It would definitely be about safeguarding the environment, or to create jobs, or to create different regions, or to promote science, technology, and innovation in the country. While these objectives are manifold and multiple, these objectives may also be not mutually reinforcing. For instance, please remember what I said. An industrial park is an industrial real estate. So if you want to put a park somewhere very remote, just to create a local economy, regional economy, you may be engaging in a very expensive investment that might not yield the results that you expect. So in order to eliminate these challenges about policy conflicts, it is very, very important to create a coordination mechanism to ensure that all stakeholders who understand what they need and what they want to come together to create to contribute to the decision making. Now, industrial park thinking has developed over the years. In China, for example, as my Director General indicated, the first park was put up in 1980 to support manufacturing operations in the country and to attract foreign investment. But now, when you go to China, you see comprehensive urban complexes that support what Chinese national policy indicates as an ecological civilization. They are not parks anymore, they are industrial cities. They are like, you would, I have lived a few years in the States. In the United States you have towns. You would have a 50,000 person town, and that would be a really big town, biggish city. The 300,000 people living in a city would be considered a relatively large city, right? But in China, millions of people live in these industrial parks now. They have everything from opera to high schools to a few universities, and it's an urban complex that breathes and lives and moves forward together. In India, the first park was set up in 1956, and their objective was to create a balanced development between agriculture and industry and to promote small industries. Now, parks in India focus on competitiveness, improving competitiveness, so that their manufacturers could link up better and more into the global value chains. And cluster development is another objective. In the Republic of Korea, South Korea, the first park was set up in 1962 to increase very specifically export industries. Today, their policy, the 2018-2022 National Development Policy of South Korea indicates that the parks will become smart innovation cities in a decentralized way to promote new technology and high-tech industry development. They're focusing on a number of Industry 4.0 initiatives. So what have been the results? Parks, as an aside, parks could be mixed. Most industrial parks are mixed. Mixed meaning different industries, as long as their operations don't interfere with each other, they are mixed. But some parks may be specialized. In India, this example shows you a specialized park, results of a specialized scheme, a scheme for integrated textile parks. And I'd like to draw your attention to, if you can see my pointer, that they are really small. Small, very small in fact, because they are aiming for textiles and they have multi-story buildings. That is why the area of what they call parks are very small. Oops, sorry. Okay. I will not get into the numbers, but what I wanted to show you is that in India, the government provides grants to enterprises who come together privately to set up the parks. But only 40%. They provide 40% of the total cost as a subsidy to the private sector to set up the parks. Something to think about. In Turkey, the estimated public investment in parks for bigger parks for medium-sized enterprises as of 2016 has been about $42 billion. For small businesses, as of 2016, the public investment has been around $14 billion. The government has spent another $500 million for science and technology parks. Since 1995 in Turkey, 86% of foreign direct investment has been located in the parks established for medium-sized enterprises. And you can see in the presentation, I think you will get it, they have been, I also provide some productivity figures. For instance, in the medium-sized enterprise parks, the productivity per person has been up to around $22,000 and so on. But these have to be, these kinds of numbers have to be assessed within an economy and under an economy's conditions. I just want to run you through an industrial park, a typical industrial park in Turkey. This is special because this is the medium-sized park, and this park is rather newly established to link. It's for small businesses, small industries, so that the medium-sized and small-sized industries can collaborate more easily. This is what it looks like for the medium-sized industries. I will let you make a picture, sir, and maybe get a glass of water on that occasion. And small industrial area is like this. Quite a number of these shops are shared or they are modular. It has a wastewater treatment facility. On this side there is also a solar drying facility for the sludge. They have a fire station. Here is where they park the ambulances. They have an energy generation plant because this locality has natural gas. So they have been generating their own energy and selling the surplus back to the grid, the national grid. They have more recently started generating energy through solar means. They have a logistics center, a bonded warehouse, and the customs office in the park. They have recreational areas for tennis, running, just sitting around. They have the commercial services center. This is 80,000 square meters area, the center, restaurants. They have asked the Ministry of Education to locate a technical and vocational school and run it inside the park. They have requested the Ministry of Industry to put up and operate an industrial automation, welding, and computer-aided manufacturing training and test center. They have asked the Ministry of Technology to put up, together with the universities in the city, a technology development and incubation center where there are a large number of small businesses working on technologies, and they have an expansion area. One of the important factors one has to think when starting a park is the expansion area. It should have the opportunity to expand. And this place is already expanding. And they have a new project. This is just still on the drawing board, where they want to create a sports and cultural center both for the people working on the park and their families. Now, what have we learned? The lessons learned. I try to go rapidly through these. You will remember a film. There was a man who was saying, let me build a baseball field and they will come and play baseball here, right? That was a dream. Let's build it and they will come. Unfortunately, does not work. One must ensure that there is demand from the industry and service and commercial sector to work in a park. Parks are also affected by the broader challenges in the country, particularly if there is weak governance, if there is corruption. These things also impact on park projects. Park promoters must have a unique vision and clearly articulated objectives to make sure that multiple objectives reinforce each other and not be counterproductive. There has to be clear and high-level political commitment. Industrialists may have a lot of money. They might be willing to invest. But unless the government facilitates, even private sector cannot really create successful parks. Location, location, location. What we have learned, you have to match the location to the objectives that you have in mind for the park. Otherwise it doesn't work. And funds for infrastructure development has to be reserved and available, and everybody, all the park promoters, public and private, must do a lot of advocacy and lobbying. Now, all stakeholders must have a long-term view. The scheme for the Indian textile parks, the average park there, even though it was small, right, took about 6.5 years to start, to build and start. So one needs to be patient. one needs to think that you would need to commit for about 10 years before, from the start, to full-fledged operations, because this is not, unfortunately, as easy as doing other things, right? You have to be patient. One has to be patient. And one has to fight many battles. Lose, get up, and fight again these battles. One needs determination. Administrative capacity in the country is very important, because you would need to have the public sector transform policies to eliminate barriers. Autonomy from vested interests is also important. A park is a national development policy tool. It cannot be let to be some vested interests vehicle. Private sector involvement in implementation is critical. However, public sector has a very important role. They have to make the decision to launch the park program, engaged in the strategic planning, study phases, particularly the regulatory and institutional issues, and engagement with potential partners. Equal treatment of the private sector, whether it is domestic and foreign, is also critical. This has been learned through many years of experience. And finally, we all talk about public-private, we talk about public-private partnerships. There are many types. This is from the European Commission. On this side, traditional public sector procurement, where the owner, operator, and financier is the state, but they engage the private sector to build, to do engineering works, to do contracting, to a totally private modality. All of them can work and have been shown to work. But being totally private doesn't mean public sector doesn't have a role. Public sector has an important role. Think of the Turkish parks. Turkish parks are 100% private. They are. From the start, they are private. But the government gives grants, loans, loan guarantees, and that's not the most important part. The government, for example, decides and puts in the vocational school. The government puts in the customs operation and takes care of the cost, right? Industrialists don't pay the cost. The customs operate there by themselves. So it has to be a genuine and a tight partnership between the private sector and the public sector. And I must underline again, industrial parks have worked because they are national policy instruments, and while the government makes policies, it's a joint responsibility between the industry and the public sector to use this policy tool appropriately. With that, I'd like to thank you very much for your attention and look forward to interacting with you all these next days. Thank you. Thank you again.